Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining our webinar today. My name is Laura Rodriguez, and I am the Director of Partner Success and Marketing at SureImpact. Our topic for our webinar today is Mid-Year Social Impact Assessment Checkup, why it matters and how to do it. Our speaker today is Sheri Chaney Jones, founder and president of SureImpact, an author, researcher, and expert in social impact measurement. Sheri believes in data, metrics, and accountability. Sheri is passionate about women's equity and the advancement of girls. She is the Columbus chapter president of the National Association of Women Business Owners and a commissioner for the Columbus Women's Commission for the Mayor's Office. Just a reminder, we'll answer any questions that you submit during the webinar through the chat panel. Feel free to participate as much as you would like. If we don't answer all of the questions, we will make sure to follow up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Sheri.
Thank you so much, Laurel. Hello and good day, everyone. I hope you are staying cool. If you are in a climate right now that is quite hot, many people in our area are impacted by a lot of power outages. So if that is you, my heart goes out to you. But I'm very, very excited today to be talking about a mid-year social impact assessment. So if you're like me, you're probably sitting there thinking, how is it June 15th already? June 15th, 2022. We are approaching mid-year. And for me, this year has been a blur. I don't know about you, but if you're like many of our partners at SureImpact, you've been experiencing a lot of turnover, a lot of changes, a lot of transitions in your organization. So maybe those best laid plans that you had set out at the beginning of 2022, you may have had some distractions, and that's okay. But what great leaders do, what very successful leaders do, is they often, when they're in a period or there's been a period of transition or change, they stop, they focus, they pause, they regroup, and then they go forth and reemerge. So that's what we're going to do today. Congratulations for taking some time out of your busy day, whether you're here live or you're watching the recording, to be able to take that break, take that pause, and have a conversation about what we can be doing to move forward. So to help me better prepare a presentation today and tailor the content to what you need most, I'd love to know where you are on your impact and outcomes journey right now in 2022. Here's some options. It's a check all that apply, right? You might be able to be in one of these three categories. But we see when we look at the government, nonprofit, social sector, corporate social responsibility spaces that we serve, we often see organizations in one of these four categories or several of these categories. And wherever you are today is where you're supposed to be, because you're on a journey and you're taking the next step. But for me to understand who we've got on the call today, if you wouldn't mind opening up those chats, let's be interactive today. If you're like me, Zoom fatigue is real. However, what I love about Zoom is the fact that we can be all over the world together and still have this experience in sharing this information. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, one, where are you in the world? I think that's really fun to know where people are. I know we've got people in Ohio. I see some people I know out in Florida and some other places across the country. So put where you are, as well as where are you on your impact journey. So open up that chat. Let us know, are you an organization that has data about who you serve? So maybe you're really good about just tracking your who you're serving, demographic data. Maybe you have data about the number of services you provide. So you're also tracking, your outputs, if you will. Maybe you know how well you're serving them. Maybe you have quality data about how well you're doing. And then also, do you have data around how those individuals you're serving and people in your communities are better off? So let me know where you are in this journey, what type of data your organization collects, and where you are in the world. Okay, we've got, and I'd love to see where we've got people from. It's a lot of fun to see. We have Washington State, Hudson, Ohio. We've got so just on the number of people or who we serve, Delaware, Ohio, just number of people served. We've got Florida, Missouri, Kansas City. Oh, I love this. I love Zoom because we can be from all over the place. All right, Haley, you got A, B, and D. Congratulations on getting some outcomes, and demographic data. Fort Worth, Texas, Akron, Ohio. This is great. Well, thanks so much for sharing. We will be talking about, oh, good, Megan. I'm glad you track all of those. We'll be talking about how to use this data, making sure you have the right data. If you do have A, B, C, and D, how are you going to use that data? Hi, Caleb from Dayton, Ohio. Glad you're here. A, B, C, and you have A and B. And let me see what you said here. Oh, lots of opportunities to grow on C and D. Great, you are all in the right room. This is super exciting. All right, I love to be with like-minded people talking about data and impact. So here we are. We're halfway through the year. We want to make sure we have a great, successful 2022, and we're having data defining how we're going to do that this year. So first we need to go back and remember, what did we decide at the beginning of the year? So let's focus. If you've got a notepad, let's take some notes. But thinking about, how did you define success for 2022, and look at where you are today. And we'll talk about two things. One is, if you are, we have a mix of people on the recording today, the call today. Some of you are SureImpact adopters, so you already have SureImpact, and I would expect those of you that are using SureImpact would already be able to say you have your outcomes data, you have your demographics data, you have your service data, you may even have some quality data. And so for those of you who are SureImpact partners and adopters, we'll talk about how to take that data and take it to the next level, so you can drive and maximize that information to be more successful and impact-centric. For those of you who may be tuning in because impact assessment was something that you are really interested in, we'll talk a little bit more about what data elements you should have, why you need those, how you should use those, and how SureImpact, we'll talk more about SureImpact, and how SureImpact can help you easily automate that information so you can more successfully increase your impact. So what we need to do is first think about, what were our goals we set from 2022, and what's the connection between the services you provide and the outcomes you produce. So hopefully at the beginning of 2022, many of you were on our session or listening to our session. We did it back in the beginning of the year about having the most successful 2022 possible. And we talked about the importance of understanding that theory of change, understanding you set goals related to what you do and the results that you want people to have. So making sure that those were clearly defined. You also want to examine how your work is contributing to those positive changes in the community. So can you look back over your past 6 months data and share and celebrate, what have you done? What movement have you had? What successes have you had? And can you compare that to what you said you wanted to achieve, right? So we want to look at what we defined as success and look at benchmarks of where we are today. Are we on track? Are we off track? Did you establish those key milestones? Are you on track for those milestones? And if you haven't done any of those yet, that's fine. Now is a great time, especially many of you are probably on a state fiscal year. So for some of you, although this might be halfway through the calendar year, we actually might be at the beginning of your new fiscal year. So if we're at the beginning of your new fiscal year, here's a great roadmap for you to define success for your fiscal year 2023. And then what do you want? This is so important, right? We have to keep the end in mind. We must start from where the end in mind is and work backwards. What do you want your annual report to show at the end of 2022? It is not too early to start mapping out what you would love, the story you would love to tell. It's the end of this year. It is not too early to start kind of drafting that report to make sure that you have all the data elements. Now, it doesn't guarantee, for example, if you have a benchmark that 75% of the youth that you serve will increase functioning by the end of 2022. If that's your benchmark, that's awesome that you have set that. And of course, you want to tell that story at the end of the year, but it's okay if you don't hit the benchmark. It's okay if you end up at 68% instead of 75%. You might blow it out of the water. You might be at 89% versus 75%, but it's fine if you don't hit it, because you can, if you have the relationship between what you want to do, the services you provide, and the outcomes, You can make those pivots, you can make those adjustments, you can tell those stories, you can understand what's driving those outcomes. And that's pretty exciting stuff. So think back, how did you define success in these 4 categories in 2022? If you didn't define these yet, if you don't have a concrete theory of change, if you don't understand what are those milestones you must hit to get to those results, then this is a good place to start. It's a good place to pause, start and say, okay, I need to define success first, because it's not until you define what success is, can you look at the data that you've already collected to help you drive your mission forward. All right, so why is this session so important? Because what we focus on grows. It's a natural phenomenon. Psychologists have done study over study on this particular phenomenon, that when we set a goal, when we set a target, when we are laser vision focused on a particular outcome, and we've written it down and we've told the world about it, the ability for us to achieve that goal exponentially increases than when we don't do that. So that is why this session is so critical to your success, because first we need to have established those goals, establish those milestones. And once we've done that, we need to periodically look and say, is our strategy still on target? It is very, very possible that you're in the last 4 or 5 months, you're like many, many nonprofit professionals, government professionals who have been a bit distracted, who have had to take on more than they thought they had to take on because of significant turnover, significant workforce issues. And if that's you, that's okay. This is now time to get back on track, to ask yourself, is our strategy on target? Now, hopefully, you did set these goals at the beginning of 2022, and you understood what resources your organization had to produce some sort of outputs to certain demographics of those individuals in your community to achieve short-term and intermediate-term outcomes for those individuals. And so now is a great time to go look at those goals, go look at, if you're a SureImpact customer, you've got this easy. This step is so easy for you, because all you need to do is log in to SureImpact, look at your dashboards, ask yourself, when you look at the number of service hours, or you look at the number of clients served, you look at the outcomes that you've achieved so far to date, just sort your filters by the date range you want. You can clearly see, am I on track? Am I off track? Am I serving as many people as I thought I would by this time? Am I delivering the services I thought they would to them by this time? And are my outcomes moving the way they should this time? So here's an example. If you are a SureImpact customer, go in, run your service hours report, filter by time period if you want, to see, are you averaging a certain amount of service hours per month? And how is that in relation to what you desired to achieve, right? Because maybe you're not getting the outcomes you wanted because the services, you just haven't had the bandwidth to provide the services that you wanted in your programs because of staffing or capacity or anything like that. So this is a great time, because what we do impacts the results we're going to receive for our clients, our beneficiaries. So right now we want to look in and see how well have we done those service hours. Again, for those of you who may not be SureImpact customers, and then for those who are, this is a great time to go in and look at your dashboards, to look and see, okay, how am I moving the needle in those key outcomes? We've seen some interesting phenomenons with some of our SureImpact partners earlier in the year, where those who are tracking ability to pay mortgage or rent for their customers, they were seeing an actual decrease. And they had real-time visibility into the fact that this was trending downward, that when at the end of 2022, their families were able to pay their mortgage or rent, but a lot of those rent subsidies, a lot of the COVID relief funds had been going away. So they started to see this trend downward. So they were able to intervene quickly and move the organization forward. So now is a really good time to go in, look at your outcome data, see how well you're moving the needle on things that are important to you. If you're a SureImpact user, that's right there in front of you. You can stop, pause, reflect on it, ask yourself, what does it mean? What do you might need to be doing differently? If you're not a SureImpact customer, you may have to go find those outcome data and wherever you track them, make sure you have and see if you're on track. All right, so having the data is just one piece of the puzzle. Once you have a better sense of understanding, okay, in the last 6 months, what have we done? Who have we served? How have we made them better? Once you have a good sense of that, then we need to have performance conversations. We need to ask ourselves, if we haven't served the amount of people that we thought we would by now, why? What's getting in our way? Is it our outreach effort? Is it our recruitment effort? Do we need to be doing something differently? And is there something in our data that can help us understand what we need to be doing differently? Especially look at the demographic data for those that you served. Making sure you're hitting on the right populations that you desire to impact. Sometimes we can have really great outcomes. However, when we drill down to see who we're serving, we realize that we're not serving the most in need populations that really need our services. And SureImpact allows you very quickly to look at equity analysis to make sure that is there a disparity between the outcomes that you're receiving for one population group, whether race, ethnicity, gender versus another. So make sure you're slicing and dicing your data in that way to make sure your outcomes are equal, that the rates in which you're serving individuals are equal, and have those performance conversations. Ask yourself, if your outreach, if the first metric is off is the number of people you want to serve, ask yourself, what can we do differently with outreach? If you're that's in target, however, you're looking at the number of service hours you're providing or the activities that you're providing someone, then you can stop and ask yourself, is that influencing our outcomes? And then when you look at your outcomes data, if you're not quite getting the success rates you desire, then go back and look at the linkage between what you've done and how people are better off. And a lot of times at this year, this is a critical junction. 6 months through the year, what many of our organizations find is that there may be an issue with data compliance. And it's better to figure that out right now in June than in December and realize you've lost an opportunity for a full 12 months of data. So make sure you go in and with SureImpact, if you are a SureImpact user, you'll be able to see the comparison between the number of clients you've served this year and how many customer or clients you have data for. And so if that's an issue, if that's not aligning, it gives you an opportunity to hold those performance conversations and implement efforts to be better in the future. So the ultimate mission of SureImpact, and also the ultimate mission of each and every one of you, should become more impact-centric. Culture and mission are not the same. Let me say that again. We're going to talk a lot about how culture and mission are not the same. So mission is the work your organization does. So you may be working with families to increase housing stability. You may be working with individuals to improve their well-being and mental health. You may be working with communities and families to increase economic development and prosperity. You may be working with children to increase their education or their well-being, right? So each one of you on this call has very different missions that you're trying to do. But the culture is the way in which your organization works. It's the way in which your organization goes about to serve that. And what SureImpact is all about is helping mission-driven organizations become impact-centric. And what that means is that you are focused on the outcomes that you're trying to achieve for your families and the communities you serve, that you are truly implementing interventions and strategies that increase well-being, increase affordable housing, increase educational outcomes, increase health outcomes, right? That's what you're laser focused on. You're not laser focused on your outputs, because and people who have followed me for years know that outputs do not equal outcomes. The first program I've ever evaluated, we were working with young people, trying to get them to not return back to the juvenile justice system. And what we found is we had a really great program that was very, very good at causing people to go back into the juvenile justice system, which was not the outcome that we desired. And it wasn't that the people that worked in that program were not effective or weren't great people or weren't there for the right reasons or didn't love those children and want to make them better. It was because we were outputs focused and not outcomes focused. And once we became impact centric and focused on the outcomes, that trajectory completely changed. And so you've heard this expression before, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it is so true, because if you have a strategy to increase the well-being of young people, if that's your mission, and you have all these best laid plans in order to achieve that, but you don't have an impact centric culture, you don't have a culture where that data, where that information, where those feedback loops and continuous improvement are coming to you, you will never know if you're on track or off track. And that's one of the things that we see through all the research that we do and working with hundreds of nonprofits and government entities across the country, is that their strategy and their mission are not aligned. Because, and I would ask you, take a real critical look at your strategy and see, is it about fundraising goals? Is it about communication metrics? Is it about number of people reached? Do you have, as part of your strategy, the data you're going to collect, the mission metrics that you're going to track? And then are you using data to make sure you're on track or off track? That's what an impact-centric organization is. So again, ask yourself, this is a great time to ask yourself the hard questions. We'll be giving you this recording. Feel free to share it with your teams. Feel free to use the deck to stop and kind of ask yourself, do we have these things in place in our organization? So here are the steps to building. We'll talk about what are those steps, and it's a journey, right? And you can always improve, you can always move forward, you can always get to the next level. But we need to start with communication. Communication is key to an impact-centric organization. And I'm going to define what each of these are and how SureImpact can help you get there. All right, so the first step is stop and ask yourself, do you have transparent communication loops? And these are transparent communication loops at all levels. Do you have transparent communication loops from the staff and the people that you're serving? Are you collecting information from them that will help you know if your work is working or not working? Do you have information from them to help you know if you're meeting their needs, if you're addressing their needs in a way that will allow you to achieve your mission? So making sure you have the communication loops between those that you serve and your staff. Also, you need to have communication loops internally to your organization, making sure that everybody in your organization understands what is success criteria is. What is that definition of success? What are those goals we're trying to reach? And that they all understand that theory of change. They understand the relationship between what you do and how well you do it and why it is aligned. And they have visibility into that data. You also then need communication between programs and leadership and executive teams, making sure that the leadership teams understand what's going on down at the program level and the results that they're getting and any challenges that you're having and how leadership can help. And at the same time, the leadership teams need to communicate with the staff so they understand what are the funders' requirements. Why is this information so important? How does this information help the leadership drive nonprofit and government success? And then lastly, we need to have transparent communication from our funders, to our donors, to our stakeholders about what we're doing with those dollars that they're giving to us. How are we using them from an outputs, and then what results are they getting because of their donations? Same thing, we need to hear back from our funders, especially if we are funded by public resources, that's an ecosystem that we need to understand. Why are we needing to provide this information? How is this information helping at a higher level? What are they doing with that information? How are they using it to drive more opportunities for our ecosystem? So we need to look at those communication loops. And SureImpact, when an organization is using SureImpact, they have all of the pieces they need to have this transparent communication, because leadership can look in and see what staff are doing. Staff can communicate to leadership the results that they're having. They can share data with their funders. Funders have visibility into their whole entire network of what's going on. It makes communication extremely open. So once you have these communication loops, we have these data points that let us know, are we on track or are we off track? Are we hitting our goals? We need to create a culture where we're stressing accountability, but accountability on the right things, right? Because what we focus on grows. And so if our accountability is only on compliance-based measures, so essentially, did we recruit a person into our program? That might be, I mean, it's obviously important. We need people into our programs. But if we stop at just, compliance-based measures in terms of, how many people did we recruit into our program, or how many service hours did we deliver, which are all very important pieces of data. But if we're not stressing accountability around how are people better off, and are we doing all the things we need to move the needle, then there is a really high probability that we will never move the needle on those important outcomes. It's a very, very high probability. But when we look at the relationship between what we're doing and the results that we're getting, then that allows us to have those continuous conversations, that transparent communication to change our work. And also collaboration is so important. Again, that stresses with the communication that if you are part of a larger cohort, that you're working together. Because in our nonprofit world, the social changes that we are trying to make are very, very complex. And we absolutely love watching our SureImpact cohorts that are working together and how they're doing things collaboratively. And then they realize that 3 or 4 partners coming together with working with a family are going to drive those individuals' outcomes versus just one service or one touch. And SureImpact gives us visibility to having those collaborative working efforts, but with sharing the same outcomes. Another key to becoming impact-centric, now is a good time to assess how well our organization doing this, is as a program manager, as a program leader, as an executive director, as a funder. Am I adaptive? Am I able to take in this new information, see those outcomes in real time? And now's a great, 6 months in, you should have some pretty good visibility into those short-term outcomes and the relationship between what you've done in the last 6 months and some short-term outcomes. And can we create a conversation among our team about what's working, what's not working, and what we should do to move forward? But we have to be adaptive. And I think most of us learned that in the past 2 years, the key to taking in new information and pivoting. But when you have a SureImpact, you can log in and have these conversations every single day if you wanted. That might be overkill, but at least at an individual level, you'll have a sense of how well things are going for you in terms of those key performance goals. All right, I think I've stressed on this enough, but the really importance is if you have these continuous feedback loops, we have clear objectives, we're being collaborative, well, we need efficient and effective ways to gather the data. And we see a lot of that. And to be frank, that's why we developed SureImpact, is because we had leaders coming to us and saying, Sheri, I absolutely want to be impact-centric. I know the outcomes that my organization wants to track. I just don't have enough time, or I don't have efficient systems to give me this information at my fingertips in a way that will help me have these performance conversations. So we need to stop and ask ourselves, do we have efficient gathering of accurate data. And when you have visibility, and SureImpact provides the visibility to go in and see how well am I moving the needle on an individual level, see how am I moving the needle on a programmatic level, and very efficient at your fingertips. It also lets you see data compliance, because like I mentioned, you don't want to get to the end of the year and realize, wow, we haven't been putting in the data the way we want it to, or it should be. But you should have visibility into who has missing data, who needs new data updated, who might not have been served in the last 6 months that you thought had been served or would be served. And you need the ability to easily retrieve that data, analyze that data, make sense of that data. And SureImpact provides our partners all of that in one cloud-based, easy-to-use solution. So once we have this way to easily collect and look at our data, we want to make sure that we have clear and defined goals for what we need to do to accomplish success. So have we clearly defined what is expected in terms of what to do, why we need to do it? That's all another key. People don't want to do busy work, right? So if it is, and what I love about SureImpact is that instantaneous feedback, even all the way down at the line level. So they understand how the data that they're putting into the system, they have visibility into how they're moving the needle. They have visibility into how it can be used to have those continuous improvement conversations. So it really takes out that black hole of, oh, you make me fill out these Excel spreadsheets or these paper forms, and I don't know what you do with it. I don't know what the results are. I can't see in real time how this information is useful. But we need to make sure that all of our team understands what are those clearly defined goals, what that means, how it helps move the mission forward. And so make sure that you have that as well. And then impact-centric organizations have this continuous loop, continuous innovation. They're using the information that they've collected to increase processes, to improve processes, to set new goals, to look at what is their social return on investment, set big, hairy, audacious goals to increase that to even more. Because obviously, the more our organizations exist to change lives and change circumstances. And so when we're managing to those outcomes, that's exciting for us. We want to do more of that. Don't you want to serve more people and change more people's lives? And many of you might be freaking out and saying, no, Sheri, I don't have the capacity to serve more people and change more people's lives. And I get that. But when you have the data, when you have the evidence to show how your work is improving their lives, then you can go find more resources easily to do the work that you love to do, so you can build your capacity. So it's not feeling like, oh, I can't do more. I can't do more. No, it's you'll raise more to do more. And that's a very exciting place to be once you have this data to have those continuous improvement conversations to drive your mission forward. All right, so let's kind of step back again and recap. Hopefully you're taking a lot of notes and thinking about for your own organization where you need to be. But I want to speak to you. This particular slide is for those of you who are program managers at the program manager level or lower, or maybe you manage your own caseload. Make sure your leadership understands your impact. And we see this sometimes. As a former evaluator, I used to see this sometimes or experience this in my own career, where I knew, and you likely know, especially those of you using SureImpact. I'm definitely speaking to those of you who are currently using SureImpact. So if you're currently using SureImpact, you are logging in every single day, and you have visibility into what you've done, who you've served, and how people are better off because of your services. The dashboard is presented to you right there every single day. But your leadership team may or may not know that, depending on how busy they are, depending on if they log in to SureImpact, especially if you're a collaborative relationship, they may not even know that you have visibility or insights into this information. So if you are finding yourself at that level, 6 months in is a really great time to execute your own leadership skills and put together a small, simple report for your leadership and share with them, hey, in the last 6 months, this is what we've done. These are the number of people who have successful outcomes. Let them know what data you have available to you, because that could be the exact data that, whether it's your grant management person, or your director of development, or your executive director, that might be the insights they need to go get that next grant, and they don't know that it exists. So just share your story. You can share it up. Sometimes we forget that we can share that story up, and SureImpact makes that really, really easy. But the 3 types of data that are most important to be able to tell your short story, to go tell leadership what's working and celebrate your success and go fundraise, is 3 things. You need, and SureImpact calculates it for you. So, well, right now it calculates 2 of the 3 things for you. We're working on it automatically calculating the 3rd thing for you, but you need a clearly defined outcome. In SureImpact, you select your clearly defined outcomes. You need the number of people who achieve those outcomes. SureImpact calculates that success rate for you. It calculates the number of people who are achieving success when they started your program, how many you're achieving success now, and the percentage of clients who have maintained that success through, once they achieve it, how many have continued to maintain it over time. So if you're using SureImpact, there's no math involved. You just log in and go, wow, look, okay, there is our success rate for 2022 to date. Then you also need to understand how much your program costs. If you understand how much your program costs, and you know how many people have hit that success rate, then all you have to do is take that program cost, divide it by the number of successful people, and boom, you now have a metric of cost per success. So you can go out and tell your funders, tell your donors, tell your leadership that it costs us this amount of money to get 1 person to 1 successful outcome. That's a very compelling story to allow you to raise more money and increase your impact. All right, so many of you, hopefully you've asked yourselves a lot of great questions. You've given yourself a rating on each of these different phases of what you need to do. You've made a list of, maybe really, for those of you who are really good at collecting who you serve, the next step is to start tracking what are you doing with those individuals. And then we need to start adding the outcomes. How are people better off? And what are those results? So ask yourself, what tools will you use to manage your impact? What tools will you use to have that data at your fingertips, have clear visibility to hold those performance conversations and become impact-centric, because we need efficient and effective tools. I will tell you, I have watched organizations struggle year after year after year trying to manually manage impact management. It is almost next to impossible. It takes too much time. It is disrupted by turnover. It's disrupted by pressing fires. If all of a sudden you have a new grant and you're asking your program manager to scramble and spend 2 hours, or not even 2 hours, 2 days, we've seen 2 days of disruption, just trying to piecemeal all these various Excel spreadsheets to make any sense of the information to you report. In 2022, we need tools to manage our impact, and that needs to be part of your 2022 strategy. So if you find yourself anywhere throughout this presentation saying, I need yes, I need that. I need those outcomes at my fingertips. I need those insights about what we do and how well we do it and how are people better off right there at our fingertips. Technology is the way to do it. You have to add to your strategy. What tools will you use to manage impact? And of course, we would welcome the opportunity to work with you and to show you how SureImpact could help you be successful at reaching your goals for 2022. But those of you who are already on that right path, maybe you already have SureImpact and you're using SureImpact, here is your mid-year checklist. So get your paper and pencils out, make some notes about what steps you will take in the next 6 months to become impact centric. So you will be able to tell your impact story. So here is a review of what we talked about today. The first thing is ask yourself, are your measures aligned to your logic model? That's first and foremost. And the question I get asked, and Laurel, I'm going to answer this question right now because I get it asked in almost every presentation I do, is, all right, Sheri, we need to start somewhere. Where do we start? Well, this is where we start. You're going to create that logic model, that slide that I had about your inputs, your out, the demographics, the audiences you serve, your outputs, what services do you provide, your and short and medium term outcomes. Put that on a piece of paper. Don't even stress at this point how you'll measure it. Just put it out on a piece of paper. That theory of change. All right. And now ask yourself, so do we have data in our organization that will allow us to quantify each of those things? And the great thing about having SureImpact is it is already structured to allow you to have a structure to quantify all of those things. And back to my point about if you just put in your logic model, you want to increase affordable housing or you want to increase wellness. SureImpact has built over 200 measurement best practices for those different categories. More than those different categories, those are just examples. But if you are addressing any social determinant of health, whether it's affordable housing, education, workforce development, well-being, community belongingness, education outcomes, if you're addressing any of those, we have a measurement library that will put a quantifiable way to measure those outcomes like that. So no hassle, no stress, just here you go. Here are best practices related to that. We've taken out all that hard of figuring out how should we measure this. We have it covered for you. And our partner success team works with our customers to help them define what those best measures could be for them. So once you put your logic model together, ask yourself, are your measures aligned to that? Do you have a way to prove your logic model? So once you've done that, next system is, do you have an effective and efficient data system that allows you to have insight into this information like that at your fingertips and evaluate your performance? If you're not quite there yet, that's probably the next step. The next step is to ask yourself, how can we increase the effectiveness and efficiency of our platform? I will tell you that at SureImpact, we're constantly asking that same question for us and for our partners. How can we increase the effectiveness and efficiency of SureImpact to deliver those results to our partners? Again, we invite you to talk to us. If you find yourself in that place where you're wondering, could SureImpact be the solution we need to help us be more effective and efficient? And then the next mid-year checklist is to say, let's assume you have your output demographic outcome data. Ask yourself, what do we need to do in the next 6 months to become more effective and efficient? So if you have that impact data, you can ask yourself that now. If you don't have it yet, we need to ask ourselves, what steps do we need to take to become more impact centric? Do we need to start to build out our logic model? Do we need to add those measures? Do we need to start to have those continuous improvement conversations? And identify the missing elements of your data story. Maybe if you stop in 2022 and look at what data you currently have to quantify your logic model, you'll realize that we're doing really well with who we serve and the demographics that we serve, but we don't have that outcome information. Maybe you do have all of it. You have your outputs and your outcomes and your quality measures. Maybe now you get to take it to the next level. And this is what gets us really excited too, when you can start to look at the relationships between outcomes by demographic groups or outcomes between services provided. And then when you get to that place, when you have the data in that format, so you can start to drive an intervention, now we're impact centric. Now we're like full steam ahead. We're going to change the world because we understand the relationship between what we do and how we're driving success. I'll tell a quick story here about our friends in Orlando, Florida, Pathlate Home. When they started to collect what they do how well they do it and how people are better off, they learned that individuals that were receiving case management were 2.5 times more likely to have better housing outcomes. But what they also knew is that their funding sources were pretty siloed, and that only some people allowed for case management depending on their funding. And so what they were able to do, because they had this insight and they had this information, they were able to go fundraise to get additional funds so that now more and more of their clients can receive case management support. And so that is how using your impact data can help you expand and grow, because you have evidence of why a funder would want to fund a particular intervention, a particular service, because it drives to those outcomes. So I've thrown a lot at you in a short amount of time. I thank you all for staying engaged for this long. I'm now going to pause, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions about what you should be doing around impact management, impact assessment, creating an impact-centric organization and culture.
All right, well, thank you, Sheri, for the great presentation. So we have had some different questions come through, a few about culture, establishing impact-centric culture. We do have one that I want to address to you that's from Marlene White. She said that our community is required to input data into a homeless management information system. Is SureImpact compatible, or would staff need to enter data twice?
That is a great question. So if you have HMIS, and we have many SureImpact partners who also do have to use HMIS as part of their system. I just talked about One Pathlight Home. The way that works is SureImpact has very easy data uploads. So if you can export your HMIS data from that system and you can upload it into SureImpact, or vice versa, if your HMIS system allows you to upload Excel spreadsheets, you can download data from SureImpact and upload it into your HMIS, whichever way you prefer. But what we found works well is oftentimes what we find is housing providers, maybe a very small percentage is funded by HUD and requires HMIS. So if that's your case, what we recommend is that for those HUD-funded clients, that data gets uploaded out of your HMIS, gets uploaded into SureImpact, and therefore you're able to track not only what HUD requires you to track, but what we found is that so many of our partners want to track beyond the HUD requirements. They want to track more quality measures. They want to track more maybe short and medium term outcomes beyond just like length of stay or housing outcome, or the things that HUD is requiring. And so they use SureImpact to track that information. They use SureImpact to track the other services they may be providing to a family. Maybe you're able to, you can also record what you're providing to their children as well as the adults. So it gives you much more flexibility, but you do not have to rekey data, which is most important. Same thing with if, let's say you're working in schools, or you have a school-based program, or you're an after-school program, and you get grades from the school system on those kids that you serve. You can just upload those grades. You don't have to key in every individual's grade. You can just upload that spreadsheet of grades you just got, and boom, now it's where it needs to be. It's tracking over time, analyzing your outcomes. So it's very, very user-friendly to avoid the duplicate entry that we know you do not want.
All right, great. Thank you for that. So another question. Sorry, scrolling through my list. Okay. So another question we had, so talking again about the culture. So we just created a logic model, but we have not shared it with our staff yet. Do you have any recommendations for getting different programs to understand impact measurement and how to increase adoption of the logic model? So they're just getting started and trying to figure out how to spread it among the culture.
Okay, yeah. So I think the first thing to do is, and we do, my sister company, Measurement Resources Company, does this a lot. When we create a logic model, I don't know if you've attached metrics to it yet or not, but let's say you're just still in the conceptual phase of it. What's very, very helpful is to go sit down at each program, each department or program, and really ask them. Hopefully they were part of the process, but if they weren't, sit down with them and ask them, do you see yourself? That's the question we ask all the time. Do you see yourself in this logic model, and what piece of that puzzle are you delivering? And if you haven't yet attached metrics to it, ask the staff the question of, and how do you know? That's key, right? So conceptually, they could say, yes, absolutely, that is what we're doing. Then ask themselves, how do you know? Now, if you're a SureImpact partner, of course, you can reach out to Laurel, and Laurel will point you to the measures library and say, here is a measures library to help you very quickly prove how you know, and you can get staff buy-in into those metrics. But the more you can bring the logic model to your staff, ask them if they see themselves in that work, ask them how they know that they're achieving those goals. If they may already have metrics they're using, so then that's what you would use to track success. But if they don't know, if the answer is, I don't know, that's where working with a partner like SureImpact could be very helpful to say, well, here is a way we can quantify it and incorporate it in part of the way we do our work.
Okay, perfect. So we have another question that just came through from Caleb Ingram. And he said, our organization in Dayton, Ohio is not primarily a direct service provider, but rather a network of churches and nonprofits in an effort to help each of our various partners more effectively collaborate and serve, similar to For Columbus, if you are familiar. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on how to measure outcomes when our work isn't as immediately tangible as number of meals served, number of people in treatment, et cetera?
I do have a lot of ways. I have a lot of thoughts around that, and Caleb, maybe we can have a strategy call after this. But so collaborative organization. So their jargon is great, but you could be considered a backbone organization or collaborative organization. The great thing there is every system, whether you have a direct impact like the number of meals provided or the number of people served, even if you're at a collaborative level, you're doing something, right? You're either convening partners, you are maybe you're leveraging resources, you're establishing, and this is what I would say, it's very key if that collaborative backbone entity establishes what we call a shared measurement across all of those partners. So although you may not be the church that's providing the meals, or you might not be the counseling center that's providing the wellness coaching, you're the convener. And so if you can get that body of providers or organizations that are the hands and feet and delivering the direct services to the community to establish a shared measurement framework, what SureImpact lets you do is set up a collaborative dashboard where you establish those core shared measures. Then everyone in that collaborative gets a sponsored SureImpact license, and they're able to track what they're doing and how their communities are better off because of the work they're doing. And then that seamlessly rolls up into the collective impact or the collaboratives dashboard, so that then now as a community of organizations working together to improve the greater good of your community, they're able to have more collaborative conversations around where are the gaps in services. So you may find that, wow, there's a lot of services delivered in terms of food and basic needs and clothes, but transportation, that's a huge gap. And so we're not seeing the economic employment outcomes we desire because people are getting their basic needs met, but we're not doing anything to move someone to the next level. And for faith-based communities, you may desire to have other measures around engagement in different programs or feelings of hopefulness or other metrics around that as well. And SureImpact allows you to gather that data from participants and aggregate and analyze it as well. But if that didn't quite answer your question, I'd love to have an offline conversation with you. Just reach out to us and we can get something scheduled.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sherry. Thank you, everyone, for participating. That is all the questions that we have today. So we will make sure we'll be following up with you afterwards. We would love to invite you to schedule some time with Sherry if you would like to discuss what your organization needs to do in order to expand your social impact. We will be sending out the recording and slides in the next couple of days. So thank you again, and we hope to see you at future webinars.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Can't wait to chat with you one-on-one for those of you who have a desire.